Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Gittin, pages 26 through 32, Chavav through Lamed Bet. 26. Hakotev tovsei Gittin, tzarich sheyaniach makom ha'ish, makom ha'isha, makom hazman. If a sofer, a person who's a scribe, is writing the boilerplate language that exists in all Gittin, in all divorce documents, ahead of time, not having any customers just yet, but wants these papers to be available just in case there is a customer who comes along and urgently wants a get. So he can do this. He can write the boilerplate language, the tofes. However, he has to leave room for the Torah, the key ingredients for each particular get, namely the name of the man, the name of the woman, and the time. Blank space must be left so that those things can be filled out. Rashi explains, "Shimroet tagar beinehem liomar hani kotev kol haget." The sofer shouldn't think to himself, "Well, I saw this couple was fighting with each other, so actually I might as well write the whole thing ahead of time." He can't do that. He can write the boilerplate language, but not the specifics. Havzain. Hamevi get avad menu. Someone is bringing a get as an agent, and he loses it. Mitzaola alter. If he finds it right away, very soon after he thinks he lost it, he recovers the get. Harayza kosher. It's kosher. It's fine. We are confident that the one that he found is the one that he lost. V'im lav. However, if he doesn't find it right away, he finds it after some length of time. Pasul. It is considered invalid. Mitzvah b'chafisa, if he finds it in some kind of a container, makiro, or if he recognizes it, kosher, it's valid. So what's the issue here? We're afraid if he doesn't recognize it, if a long time passes, then some other get written not for the people that he was involved with, but people who happen to have the same name, that's the one that he recovered. And if that's the case, it wouldn't be kosher for the people whom he was dealing with. Chavchet, 28. Hamevi get ve'enichu zaken u'chola. What happens if you're an agent to deliver a get, and the husband you left behind was sick or old, and there's a concern that maybe he's not alive anymore, and you can't deliver the get on behalf of a dead man? No Still, the law is you can deliver the get on the premise that the man is still alive. We don't assume that he died just because he was elderly or because he was sick. Bat Yisrael had a Kohen. What happens if a daughter of Israel was married to a Kohen, and the husband went on a business trip to China? So if the husband dies, and this woman doesn't have any sons from him, she would no longer be allowed to eat teruma. And she doesn't know if he's alive because there's no telecommunications, and he's off on the far side of the world in China. So what happens? She's allowed to eat truma on the premise that he is still alive. Absent any evidence that he died, you don't have to assume that he died. You just continue living as though he were alive. 29. Chavtet. Hamevi get medina tayam. If a person brings a get as an agent from a faraway place, v'chala, and he got sick, so the agent is now under the weather. He can appoint another agent in the court, in a courtroom setting, the Omer, and say to the court, it was written and signed in my presence. So he gives the formula that is required for out-of-town Gittin, he gives it before the Beit Din, and then he's out of the picture. Then the final agent who actually does the delivery need not make that declaration because, in fact, it wouldn't be true since he did not see the get written or signed. Rather, it's enough for him to say, "I am an emissary of the court," which is true. He is an emissary of the court because the first shaliach made him a new shaliach in the presence of the Beit Din. Lamed 30. Mita shechicha. Death is a common thing. After all, we're all mortal. We're all going to die eventually. Ashirut lo shchicha. However, becoming wealthy, riches, prosperity is not necessarily so common. Amar Rav Papa. So Rav Papa said, Hainu de Amri Inchi. This corresponds to what people say, colloquialism. Chavrich mit asher, it asher lo asher. So if a person says your fellow died, you could believe him. You could believe him to say so and so died. If he says so and so got rich, struck it rich, you don't have to believe him. It may not be true because not everybody gets strikes it rich. Lamed Aleph 31. Hameniach peirot. What happens if a person set aside some produce in order to use that produce to become Truma and Meiser to satisfy the obligations of other produce elsewhere? or ma'ot lahiot mafreshlin maser sheni, or coins set aside that you'll use them for the redemption of secondary tithe, the maser sheni. Mafreshlin mechezkel shen kayamim. You're allowed to take other produce that was tevel and now consider it chulin mitukanim, rectified produce, or maser sheni, which was not yet redeemed, and now consider it maser sheni that is redeemed, on the premise that this other produce that you left behind somewhere, or these coins that you left behind somewhere, have not been destroyed or lost, that they still exist. You don't see them right now, and it's possible that they were destroyed and don't exist anymore. But the last you checked, they were still there. You can rely upon them for these halachic purposes, for the designation of priestly emoluments, and for the redemption of secondary tithe. Im avdu, however, what happens if you later find out that this stuff, this supply you were counting on of produce or coins, really was gone? You looked for it, it was gone. It was disappeared. According to Rabbi Eliezer, we have to be concerned for the last 24 hours. That if you did any redemption of secondary tithe, or you tried to set aside trumas and maasros on that produce at any time in the last 24 hours, you failed in your responsibility. Because it's not here now, we assume that it's gone. It's been gone for a day. Longer than that, we don't have to worry about. Lamed bet 32. Hasholech get l'ishto. You send the get by way of an emissary to your wife. But you catch up to the shaliach along the way. Or you send another agent to catch up to the first agent. And say, the get that I gave you to deliver to the wife is now hereby null and void. He changed his mind. It's not a valid get anymore. Behold, this get is null and void. Now, bear in mind that in theory, the husband could have made the get null and void not in the presence of the shaliach. And the shaliach never would have known, could have given it to the wife, and a disaster would have struck, whereby she thinks she's divorced, and maybe under Torah law she's not. However, the sages made an enactment to prevent that from happening. It becomes necessary, if you want to render the get null and void, to inform the shaliach that in fact the get is null and void, so as to avoid disastrous problems for the woman. Everyone have a great day.